My goodness me, what on earth is Suella Braverman up to, suggesting that the Met Police are biased?
Well, look, what we're all doing in government, and I was at a meeting with the Home Secretary, two meetings this week actually, where we were entirely focused, a number of ministers and those from a range of the policing family, the Met Commissioner and other police leaders, all focused on making sure that, particularly this weekend, with the important Armistice Day on Saturday and Remembrance Sunday, that the protest takes place peacefully, and that all those that wish to travel to London for the Armistice and Remembrance Sunday events feel that they can do so with confidence. That's what the police are focused on doing. It's why the Prime Minister had the Commissioner in yesterday to ask the Commissioner for important assurances about what the Met's doing to protect those remembrance events and to make sure that the protest passes off peacefully. That's what we're all focused on doing within government.
Are the Met Police biased?
Well, look, I think the Met Police are focused, as I've seen them this week, focused on keeping people safe at the weekend. They're putting in place measures across the board to make sure that the protest takes place peacefully, that people obey the law, and that other members of the community can go about their lawful business without being intimidated or frightened. And that's what they're focused on doing. And that's not just the Met, that's other police forces. I have the ministerial responsibility for the British Transport Police, which polices our railway system and our transport network. And we want to make them to use their full legal powers to make sure people can be free of intimidation. And we don't see the scenes that we saw previously where people were concerned about using railway stations.
Do they do that in a biased way?
They do that in a very responsible way.
Is it biased?
They do that in a very responsible way, focused on obeying the law. The police. So
she's wrong to say that.
The police are focused on implementing focused on keeping people safe and implementing the law, using the full force of the law, which, by the way, we strengthened this year in the Public Order Act to give them more tools to keep people safe, and that's what they're focused on.
I know. The Home Secretary says there are double standards between left and right-wing groups. Do you think they are?
I think the police are focused on policing to keep people safe, and those were the assurances the Prime Minister asked the Commissioner for.
I mean, it's ridiculous for her to say this sort of thing. Is she trying to get sacked?
But the Prime Minister focused yesterday, when he had the Commissioner in, on the substance of this issue, which is to check that with the Commissioner that the police have put everything in place to keep the Armistice and Remembrance events protected, which the Commissioner assured him that he had, and that they had all of the measures in place to make sure that the protests, when they take place, do so safely. It's worth remembering, Kay, that Britons and Israelis can do these protests and can express a whole range of opinions. Hamas wouldn't let these protests take place, and that's the difference between living in a free society and being ruled by terrorists.
Would you say what she said in the article in the Times this morning?
Well, look, what we've all been doing in government is focusing on the substance, which is about...
Why don't you want to answer my question?
Which is about... Well, no, I'm answering your question. I'm just answering it in my way. Look, I've been sat in a number of meetings this week with senior ministers, including the Home Secretary and police leaders, and those from our intelligence community, who are all focused on making sure that there's no disorder this weekend and that people are able to go about their lawful business.
OK, you mentioned the Prime Minister. You mentioned the Prime Minister and him calling in to Mark Rowley, the Commissioner, yesterday. He said that Mark Rowley will be accountable for his decision for this march to go ahead. What does accountable mean? Does that mean if it goes badly, he'll get sacked?
Well, look, the legal position is very clear on this. The right to seek an order to prohibit a protest is an operational decision for the Metropolitan Police Commissioner. Many people have suggested that he should have used that. He said yesterday that he didn't think the legal test had been met, that there would be a risk of serious disorder.
What do you think?
So, well, that's an operational decision for the Commissioner, and I think that's for him what the Prime Minister wanted to do. And it is the job of, in a democratic country, for the police to make those operational decisions, but it is ultimately for politicians to hold them to account. That's what the Prime Minister was doing yesterday. He wanted to seek assurances from the Commissioner that the police had put every measure possible in place to make sure that the protest takes place peacefully and within the law, and that the rest of the community feels safe.
Let me put it this way, if I may, please, Secretary of State. Whose fault will it be if trouble breaks out? The Home Secretary says it'll be the fault of the police.
Well, the police are focused on making sure that there isn't trouble and that the law is enforced. And I'd also say, look, the government's been clear that although the people have a right to protest, protesting on Armistice Day is disrespectful we think, to those that made the ultimate sacrifice that we're remembering, and that it shouldn't take place. But people have the right to protest, and the police need to make sure that the march passes off peacefully. They've got more legal powers to do so following the strengthening of the Public Order Act, and the Prime Minister was holding to the Commissioner to account yesterday to make sure they're going to use those powers.
Two other things. The RMT union is voting, asking their members whether they want to accept a 9% deal over 2 years, mutually agreed. We'll be speaking to the leader of the RMT very shortly. Were you involved in sorting this out?
Well, look, I've been on your programme before and you've asked me this question. There is a deal on the table. It's been on the table for quite a long time, this deal. And I think I've said to you on previous occasions that I wanted the RMT to put the deal to their members, to give their members the chance to express a view on it. I'm very pleased that the train operating companies and the RMT were able to issue a joint statement yesterday saying they'd reached agreement and that the RMT is going to ask their members to express a view. When they did on Network Rail, their members voted overwhelmingly to accept it. That's what I hope they do, so that they can get a pay rise. We can get on with then focusing on getting more people back on the railways to deal with its financial sustainability post-pandemic.
Sounds as though, from what you're saying, the union's folded, but let's see what our RMT leader says when he comes on. I know you want to talk about vehicles, driverless vehicles, self-driving vehicle. You were in one the other day, weren't you?
I was yesterday, yes. I was driven around Westminster in one by a fantastic British company called Wave.
OK. And if one of those vehicles is in an accident while you're not got your hands on the wheel, you're not responsible for what might happen? No,
so what we're doing, so the legislation that we've announced in the King's Speech will set out a very robust legal framework to make it clear who's responsible. And so what we'll be doing is if the car's in full self-driving mode, the driver, obviously the passenger won't be responsible. It'll be the company that's developed that technology. And we're going to set out a framework of how that will work. And by giving companies that regulatory certainty, it makes Britain the best place in the world for companies to develop that technology. The important thing for people at home to remember is actually this is about how you improve road safety. The overwhelming majority of accidents that take place have some level of driver human error involved in them. We can actually make roads safer, not just for drivers, but also for vulnerable road users, for pedestrians and for cyclists. And all the companies involved in this area are absolutely focused on safety. There's a big economic win here, is if companies develop this technology in Britain, then we'll create a huge number of jobs and lots of economic growth, which will be very promising. We're a leading player in this area. That's why the Prime Minister was very keen to introduce this legislation, and we're going to take it through Parliament as fast as we can. We're out of time, but I know you'll want to comment on this. I see you wearing your poppy with pride. The Sun saying this morning that poppy stalls, we don't see them at train stations, not least because of 78-year-old Jim Henderson, who was kicked and punched when he was trying to sell poppies the other day. Well, look, I saw that story and it's terrible, and that's why the British Transport Police are focused on keeping people safe using our rail network. Rail stations are not places where people should be protesting. They're places where people should be going to use the transport network. Yeah. The BTP are focused on keeping those stations free of protest so that people can sell poppies in confidence but also use the rail network. Importantly, this weekend, veterans can get to those remembrance services free of charge, and I want them to have the confidence to travel safely on the rail network. And that's what the British Transport Police is focused on doing.